Tonight on 57 Minutes, our talented economic commentator, Mr. Alex Bainbridge, has a tell-all interview with Adam Smith, the Senior Economic Advisor of our United Kingdom. In this interview, we go into depth of globalisation and its impacts on the economy. Find out what Smith has to say in this truly chilling tell-all interview you cannot miss out. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that today I introduce to you Mr. Adam Smith, Senior Economic Advisor of the United Kingdom. Firstly, Mr. Smith, I want to thank you for being here on 57 Minutes. It is much appreciated.
Well, please, you can call me Adam, and I've got to say it's an absolute privilege to be here.
Okay, Adam, let's get this interview started. So, globalisation. Everybody knows what globalisation is, integration between different economies and countries, but what do you understand to be globalisation from a UK's perspective?
Well, you've said it, Alex. Globalisation truly is the coming together of the world, having different countries, different economies, joining together. It's absolutely tremendous, especially for us, the UK. Globalisation, it's a must. You know, as you already know, the UK is one of the most open economies in the Western world and trade with many different countries. And thanks to globalisation, this is growing and growing. And it's, as a result of that, it's rising in terms of our GDP, the percentage of economies that we're trading with, impacts on the UK growth. Gone are the days, you know, we just trade domestically.
Rightly so, Mr. Smith, or Adam, I should say. Look, let's get right to the thick of things now. We both know that the UK suffered greatly during the 2008-2009 global financial crisis, and to some extent we still are, with unemployment only now dropping to a mere 6%. Well, what I'm trying to get at is, why do you think other countries want to globalise or integrate with us? What makes the United Kingdom such a good place to invest in?
Before I answer that question, I'd just like to point out that there are a lot of countries that suffered from the GFC. It was called a crisis for a reason, and in terms of our unemployment rate, it went up dramatically to towards 10%. I mean, now it's going towards 6%, and I think the last figures that came out were just less than 6%. And it's continuing to drop, which is great, because that shows that our economy is improving. But back to the question, look, we as an economy, we're very appealing. This can be seen with the high levels of foreign direct investment, both inwards and outwards. The United Kingdom economy has been a favoured venue for overseas direct investment for many years, and that is now growing even stronger. You know, and there are many reasons for this trend, Alex, you know, including the improvements of supply side of the performance of the economy, with many countries wanting our manufactured goods, fuels, chemicals, technology, etc. We also have a favourable tax system and a much improved record in terms of industrial relations. You know, it's very rare that we have strikes in that now, like we used to in the bad old days in the 70s, you know. And this all entwines together to probably show that our economy, you know, is part of the globalisation that's taking place in the world at the moment.
And Adam, what exactly do you see as being the impacts of globalisation on the United Kingdom's economy?
Well, I mean, globalisation increases the importance for the UK to continue to develop competitive advantages in industries, you know, with of course a major growth potential.
Yeah.
This would in turn, you know, have a knock-on effect in improving the living standards of the UK public, and obviously the quality of life. Globalisation, you know, there's many advantages to globalisation, and this is beginning to show over the last few years, and it's continuing to grow. A factor in this has been the technology advancement, where other, you know, economies only have a few, you know, pressing of the buttons on the internet, and we're there. You know, so technology has impacted immensely. You know, it's truly incredible, Alex, what globalisation has allowed for.
I see why you're answering that question. improving living standards in the long term. Isn't that what they all say? It never eventuates. How long is long, Adam? You know what I mean. Like, it seems a never-ending cycle, an eternity, if you will. So, despite the fact that the impact of globalization in the UK economy is improving living standards and being able to use the internet as a form of connectivity, are there really any other impacts that globalization has had on the United Kingdom economy?
I detect a sense of sat in the way you kind of put together that question. Look, Mr. Bainbridge, there's proof that globalisation has improved the living standards of the UK economy, and an easy example of this is to see how we trade with other countries. And being part of the EU, this has led to having not just global trade, but also regional trade agreements with many countries. I mean, in terms of globalisation, apart from the EU countries, we're now trading with countries like Chile, Lebanon, South Korea, and now we're aiming at the Brazilian market and the Indian market because they're growing economies. They're just emerging.
Yeah.
Similar to what Australia's doing with China. So not only has globalisation improved our living standards, like I said before, there are other impacts. Most certainly, globalisation has led to UK economy shifting into different sections. Take example, the UK no longer has a comparative advantage in manufacturing industries, yet developing countries now have an advantage due to low labour costs. Also, Alex, globalisation has led to an increase in competition as domestic monopolies now face more international competition. I mean, I wonder how many goods yourself has purchased, like for example your suit, or your shoes. Were they made in China or were they made in Japan? And it seems now that, particularly as touched on it before, the internet has made quite a vast impact in terms of globalisation.
Well said, Mr. Smith. Much simpler question now. What do you see to be the advantages and disadvantages of globalisation impacts on the United Kingdom?
Alex, the first thing that comes to mind is migration, which of course has both a good side and a bad side. We both understand that globalisation has made it much easier for migrants to enter the workforce in the UK. I mean, in particular, in the EU, there's basically no borders. There was recently a lot of Polish people coming to the UK and found jobs. And this also helps with job vacancies. However, the disadvantage of this can also be that places a great strain on the UK sort of housing sector, public services, the health system, the national health system. So that's the flip side. The global economic cycle created through globalisation again has both good and the bad. A deep recession in the European Union potentially could affect the UK because we rely on countries in the EU to export quite a number of our goods. I mean, the current wave of globalisation places increasing heavy emphasis on the importance of human capital as a factor determining strong economic growth. Alex, it's also important to note that the UK has most likely lost forever its comparative advantage in producing smaller valued manufactured goods, which we had done in the past. However, on the flip side, the impact of globalisation has led to a global demand for higher skilled services, which currently remains pretty strong as far as the UK is concerned. I mean, one of the biggest disadvantages of globalisation is the impact and the increased competitiveness on our own domestic businesses. And as a result of this, there are many cheap prices. So, the sort of backflip on that, or the impact on that, is the inflation rate stays relatively low. I mean, at the moment, I think it's 1.5%, which is probably a little bit too low. We really need to improve that slightly towards the 2 to 3% mark. But it's certainly helped control inflation over the last 2 or 3 years. There's no doubt about that.
Okay, it is an interesting topic to discuss, migration, because it's a heavily debated topic. Many in for migration, many against migration. Many believe that it is a problem, but nevertheless, it has been a definite impact of globalisation on the economy, whether you like it or not. All right, Adam, Mr. Smith, I only have one more question for you now. What do you believe to be the impacts of globalisation on the UK government? it has had any?
Well, I mean, firstly, Alex, globalisation has definitely had an impact on the UK government, and the UK government is reacting to that. For example, they're now lowering corporate taxes and reforming, labour markets, etc. And that's with a view to attracting foreign investment into the UK. I mean, obviously, the more investment we attract into the UK, as I say, the impact on that is better living standards, etc., and getting towards the full employment. So a lot of things, there's a lot of positive things happening at the moment. And it's always interesting to talk about globalisation, and how it's reduced, I suppose, the government's ability to levy or impose or create business taxes, because many of the corporations can move to different countries. I mean, recently there's been a bit of controversy where, for example, Apple, as a company has been moving offshore to try and lower their tax sort of burden, and that is a bit controversial. And there's other big organisations and companies that are doing that.
Yeah. But
the ultimate impact on globalisation on the government is, it brings all governments together across the whole world I know it sounds a bit of a cliche, but to work together to create a better working environment, better business environment, so that there's plenty of investment, and particularly, to help emerging economies like, as I said before, India and Brazil, and of course China, who are doing absolutely fantastic at the moment with their growth rate of like double digits, nearly 10%, and that's low for them. So and these are the sort of markets that globalisation kind of opens the door to these sort of markets. So globalisation is really positive. It's really positive, and the UK have got to grasp the nettle and take the advantage of the globalisation.
Yeah, well said, Alex Smith. Well, that's all we have time for, and I want to thank you once again for taking your time to come with us and have a quick interview on 57 Minutes. It's much appreciated. And it's interesting to talk about globalisation, because I'm sure myself and the audience at home have learnt a lot. I want to thank you once again.
No, it's been my pleasure. I hope that after this interview you've got a little bit more knowledge on the impact of globalisation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope that has opened your eyes to the impacts of globalisation on the United Kingdom economy. And now we cross back to Tracy, who has the latest on the dollar blushes and the best savings for you this Christmas. 57 Minutes will be back after this short break. Good night.